Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and the author of the briefing book on Substack. Joel, good morning. Thanks so much for being with us. So this agreement announced just hours before President Trump departed Washington to head there, where Alice was to head to France for the start of the G7 summit. Both sides, though, here are seeming to declare victory. So what do you make of what we know at this point about the agreement?
Well, honestly, Savannah, we know very little, and it still hasn't even been signed. Maybe on Friday it will be signed. And at least from press reporting, and most of it we're getting from the Iranian side, it looks like a pale shadow of the nuclear deal that President Obama negotiated with Iran over a decade ago. And what I mean by that is that that deal had very clear limits to Iran's nuclear program, constraints around its enrichment, dealt with the nuclear material. None of that is in this agreement. This agreement is solely about reopening the Straits of Hormuz and having the United States commit to a ceasefire. And then they'll have more negotiations about the nuclear program. And I got to tell you, it colored me skeptical that 60 days is enough time to negotiate this with Iran. This war has already been over 100 days, and we barely have even talked about the nuclear program in a diplomatic sense.
And another thing here, Joel, that we're certainly watching is Iran wanting a ceasefire in Lebanon to be part of any deal. Israel said it won't withdraw from the territory it holds there. I mean, what's that mean? Can the president move forward with an agreement without Israel being on board?
No, he can't. To be all straight on and forward and honest on this one, from a practical perspective, the Israelis control their own security policy. And while it's important for the United States to weigh in, and we clearly can tell the Israelis our views on what they should and should not be doing in Lebanon, ultimately the Israelis need to make their own call. And this means that they should be included in any negotiation. Now, the good news is that the United States is fostering negotiations between Israel and Lebanon, and that could lead potentially to an agreement between the two governments. But the open question about Hezbollah remains on the table, and that means the Iranians have to talk about what they'll do with Hezbollah in that context. So a lot more to be done there. I don't think that it's realistic to expect the Lebanon war to just somehow magically be over because of this statement. Much more work needs to be done.
Let's talk now about the G7 summit. We just saw video a moment ago there of protesters there, obviously the president arriving. What are we expecting, especially with this news on the horizon, but also anything else that's going to be big takeaways from this?
Yeah, well, certainly this Iran agreement's going to close a bit of a chapter of what they were going to talk about at these meetings, and they'll discuss the fallout from it. But there are major issues on the global stage the United States has to deal with our allies and our friends at the G7. Even within the European context, for example, questions about Ukraine, that there's still the tariffs lingering over the policy there. And of course, when it comes to Europe, the question about Greenland, where they're very nervous about the United States. And so there's a lot on the agenda. The big issue for President Trump is what kind of president does he want to be for the next 2.5 years on the global stage. His first year and a half, he's been very active and aggressive at taking on challenges and in criticizing our allies in many instances, those at the G7 included. And so does he want to continue on that? Or is he going to use this moment from the Iran agreement that he just got to try to pivot and build some cooperative relationships going forward? This is a very key meeting, and it will help us understand the foundation for the next 2.5 years.
Joel, what do you think could be considered a success broadly at the G7 summit for President Trump?
For President Trump to get some backing from these G7 countries for his Iran agreement would be a win. If he gets that, where they state that they are committed to supporting an agreement, that they are looking forward to working with other Middle Eastern allies on reopening the straits and getting the global economy moving, that would be a win for him. And that would show that he has been able to leverage the deal with Iran, or the agreement with Iran, into some broader global level of support. That's been lacking so far. He's really relied upon Pakistan and several other countries to negotiate. He needs to bring the Europeans in. If he does that, that would be a win for him.
All right, Joel Rubin, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.